Welcome to the Orphic Astrology channel and to episode number 2 of the Astrology for Parenting podcast. My name is Natalya Alas, and I am an artist and sound sculptor, somatic bodyworker, and massage therapist, diviner, and astromancer, specializing in Hellenistic through medieval techniques. For today's episode, I'd like to welcome my two co-hosts, Catherine Yeager-McQuaid and Catherine Urban. Thanks for coming together to discuss a little bit about family synastry and dynamics. If you can introduce yourselves for anyone who may not be familiar with your work.
Hi, I'm Catherine Yeager-McQuaid. I am a traditional and neoclassical astrologer based in New York City. I'm also a licensed massage therapist. I am a magic worker, and I am also a Uranian astrologer. And I'm so excited to be here to talk about family dynamics with both of you and also about our own personal stories.
Yeah. So lovely to be here with you both. I'm Catherine Urban. I'm an astrologer with over 16 years of astrological practice, immersion, and study, as I like to say. And right now, I do it all. I'm really into solar returns. I specialize in the medieval solar return. I primarily do natal consultations, but I also take a lot of horary and electional requests. Those are always really fun. And family astrology, one of my favorite topics. And I'm so excited to chat with you all about it. I am a mother of two. I have a Taurus daughter and I have an Aquarius son. So life is busy, life is full. They're both very young. So that's what I do. I do parenting and astrology and honestly not much else right now.
Yeah. I actually just recently discovered Catherine Urban's podcast, The Family Astrologer. So if you're looking for more thought-provoking insights around the topic of family dynamics, please check out her podcast, which will be linked to the video here and in the description box below. So today we are going to explore some of the history of synastry and how we have come to work with it in understanding and navigating family dynamics. Synastry is what I like to call the gateway drug of astrological study and practice because I feel it provides a strong sense of validity to a lot of us who end up becoming astrologers or enthusiasts. I know in my own personal experience, noticing as a child the sun sign synastry between me and my relatives showed me that there's something beyond me that is mysteriously connecting these dots between us. Also, from those Chinese zodiac paper placemats at restaurants, I would be looking up everyone's Chinese horoscope while waiting for our food. And it really struck me how there were these alignments and trines and connections through that system as well. And then later in my early 20s, when I started to cast charts and practice reading horoscopes more, the synastry became even more striking around moon signs and the angles and other placements. So I feel synastry reveals to us how our fates are intertwined, and it can be compelling evidence for the greater mystery of the science and art of astrology. Synastry is the area of astrology that I feel a lot of us start off practicing or looking into in the beginning, especially. And yet we kind of take for granted that this branch or niche wasn't always as significant as it is for us today. And most people probably check the synastry between partners or potential partners and crushes, with family coming in second. But I find that family dynamics, especially for those of us who have maybe challenging family narratives or are working on breaking intergenerational cycles, these areas can be highlighted and healed by looking at them through a different lens, which synastry provides. And of course, as parents, we naturally look to see where our relationships with our children will be supportive and where we can possibly improve upon, especially in conscious parenting. Family synastry between the parent and child can be incredibly beneficial for helping us understand our children and how best to serve them and bring them up. So Catherine compiled an historical outline for the origins of synastry, which she'll share an overview of next.
Now, I'm not going to say that I am the end all be all expert on the origins of synastry, but according to some of the research that I saw, synastry in general is just the comparison of two or more natal charts for relational dynamics. In the Hellenistic period, which is kind of the period I began in, we really don't have much foundational evidence of synastry being used. People would look at things in regards to marriage. They'd look at things in regards to the aspects that different planets were making, especially the luminaries were making to one another. The luminaries tend to stay pretty much across the board within synastry as something that people really focus on. Direct parent-child synastry, nada. And pretty much as I kept looking, I didn't see much about parent-child synastry. When we look at Vettius Valens, he brought in a lot of conceptions around using the lots, using the lot of the father, the lot of the mother, and many, 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 many lots otherwise too. As we move on forward, we kind of see that we get to the point where people start using composite charts. And really, the individual that I saw that was using them the most was Robert Hand, although really, it looks like Reinhold Eberton, which is for me as a Uranian astrologer, like a father of, some of Uranian astrology. Eberton, who worked a lot with midpoints, and that's what composite charts are. They're taking the midpoints of two different planetary pictures and creating a chart out of that. And so the composite charts started really being used, but again, that was mostly just for marriage, relationship, love type things. And when we ground ourselves in the historical time period of the Renaissance, medieval, and the Hellenistic, they didn't really care that much about more than, is this child going to stay alive? Yikes, again, that's very medieval Renaissance-y. But the medieval Renaissance, what they would do is they mostly cast horary charts. So it was astrological divination that was mostly used when looking at synastry or what was going to be going down with your children. And then we kind of continue to move forward. We had the composite charts, and then we move forward from there, and we get to more of the psychological modern astrologers like Liz Green, like Robert Hand. We move even more forward, and we have our lovely guest who we have on today, Catherine Urban, who, you are one of the people that are working around family dynamics. I know that you get plenty of consultations, and I'd love to hear more about that. It's not normal all the time for an astrologer to be sought out to read the chart of the child. Most astrologers will say, nope, can't read a chart until you're 28, or until the first Saturn return. That's a big deal, right? And we have our previous episode about the ethics of astrology. But, this idea, I remember I was in class one day and the teacher said, which one is the most important house? And a father went, the fifth house. And he was like, no way, it's the fifth house. And I'm like, if you're a parent, it's the fifth house, And if you look at synastry and you're a mom, and you're an astrologer, you are looking at your kid's chart. And sometimes you don't always like what you see in that chart. My daughter is an Aquarius as well. Aquarius freaking everything. Saturn, everything. You think that does well with me? She's like, Mom, tone it down. But she she is also an Aquarius, and everything's in the 12th house. Everything, 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 everything. So as an astrologer, I went, around that. And so we begin to learn how to approach the charts in a different way. So Catherine, I'd love to know from you, what have you seen within your own practice? Um, and what do you find? How do you help to allay the different fears of parents when they come? Because usually they're not coming to be like, dee, tell me how great my kid is. They're usually coming because they're like, oh, my kid won't sleep, or my kid has this, or my kid has that, or is the die cast, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So first, I want to acknowledge what you were saying about like, when is it okay to give a reading? And I remember as a student of astrology learning that ethically we shouldn't read to people who are 18 and older. And I immediately was, I mean, I was like in my early 20s at the time. So I was like, No, like that's silly. I would have loved for someone to read my chart when I was when I was 16, like when I was trying to find myself in my
Mm,
teens, when I felt alone as a teen or just confused about like what am I going to be when I grow up and how do I navigate teen issues? And I think astrology would have been really supportive and really helpful for me at that time. Although you're probably not going to approach a child's chart the same way that you would approach an adult's chart. You're not going to be um, getting into certain personal details. It's more something that I tend to approach reading children of all ages is just an openness and curiosity and wonder about who they're
mhm,
going to be. And you kind of talk more just like openly about what certain aspects could be versus what they are going to be. Because when
mm,
you consult with someone who has crystallized themselves. That's a good Saturn return word. You define yourself, you sort of
mhm,
define and choose the path, or the path chooses you. And so things
mm,
tend to be a little bit more defined for a person after their Saturn return. And so it's easier to look at how
mm,
those planets and placements are definitively showing up for someone who's past their Saturn return. But for someone who is a youth or especially a newborn. Oh my God. It's like this is a seed of potential for who you could become. And as astrologers, I think it's important to have a certain degree of humility when we do forecast for anything, be it world events, ourselves, our
mm,
clients, because we know that time after time after time that astrology tends to be more archetypal. It does tend to show up in more like the transit could show up a number of different ways. We know that energy, we can predict the weather, we can predict the energy, but we don't always know concretely how that event is going to actually manifest. And it's always that's why we say in astrology that it's hindsight is 2020 in astrology. And astrology is really useful for making sense of our situation, making sense of what's going on. And so therefore, when we're looking at a child's chart, we need to have reverence. We need to have humility for like, who are
mhm,
you going to become? And we
mm,
know too that there's people walking around with really difficult charts and they're doing just fine.
mhm.
um,
Absolutely. Yeah. And
so
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say to finish your other point is that, yeah, I do get a lot of parents
Mm,
coming to me who know just enough about astrology to be a little bit dangerous, where they're looking at their sweet child's birth chart and they're worried about something. So I am more than happy to connect with parents about their newborn, and to have a little supportive conversation about their baby's chart, because I know I've certainly been there. So why wouldn't I hold space for someone else in that way?
Yeah.
And I think it's undermined the experience of childbirth and the mother and the parents, not to diss the fathers as well and the males, but that we're so sensitive about our children. You know,
Yes.
we are, the process of motherhood, from what I've learned, is this long letting go. First, they come out of you and you got to let go of them that way. You don't get them have them, and then after that, it's just this long process of letting go. My emotion's not your emotion. My experience isn't your experience. And that's something around the synastry of using astrology that is very helpful. As I spoke about before, my Mercury is not Saturnian, but my daughter's is. And so understanding that and understanding that, what I say, I mean, I need to mean it. I can't be all flights of fans. I need to mean it. It needs to be straight. It needs to be clear. She wants it clear, and she wants me like looking at her, like, dear God. But but I've learned how to be able to communicate better with her looking at that synastry, or things that I know I'm going to harden up over, and we talk about conscious parenting, but, I got triggers, man. As a mom, we all do, unfortunately. And the chart can also tell me some of my triggers. So sometimes, too, when I'm looking at children's charts or very newborn charts, I'm always usually juxtaposing them, because some of the storyline is also the parental influence, and you got
Yeah.
to be careful what you plant in that parental mind, because whatever you plant, they're going to run with, and if they're a little seed, they're the waterers, they're the gardeners for right now. That the child doesn't have that opportunity to nurture themselves. So it's very
Yeah.
important.
100%. Yeah. I usually because I'll do family readings for people want to tell me, want to connect with like their siblings and their parents and people of all ages. But when I'm meeting with the parent of a newborn,
Mm.
I am usually like 90% of the time, I am not just looking at the newborn's chart. I am looking at the mother's chart, because I want to know where their concern is deriving from. And I think there's a universal concern of you, you've just birthed a baby, your whole world has just been shattered. Your heart has just been broken open. You've never known that you could love someone else so much, and you want to protect them from everything.
Mhm.
You don't want them to experience pain or hardship or none of that. And so when you see, like, I think our job, like, we're wired to detect danger, to protect our newborn child. And so when you're looking at their chart and you see danger in that chart, you're on red alert. And so a lot of what I do in my sessions with people is I reassure them that you're here because you love your child. So you're already doing the right thing. You're already on the right path. And I do try to sort of de-escalate some of the concern around what they're seeing in the chart, because, now is not the time for that. Now is not the time to be worrying about what could happen when they're 30, when they're 50,
Mhm.
and to enjoy this time with their baby.
Mhm.
So that's usually what I'm doing. And then I'm usually also looking for supportive aspects between their charts to sort
Yeah.
of lead them to focus on that.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes me think about my own personal experience with my daughter's chart, and she's my firstborn. And yeah, i- it's uh it's kind of interesting how the whole journey began. And we get our like estimated due dates, and so her due date was coinciding with the anniversary of my older brother's passing. So I was like, please, like, I don't want you to share this with him, because I wasn't feeling like it would be, I wasn't feeling his soul necessarily like reincarnating, that type of scenario. I didn't feel that with her. And yeah, so I remember looking at the possible dates around that time and the astrology of those dates. And there was like the new moon in Cancer, and I have the moon in Cancer natally. So I was like, oh, that would be cool if we have the same moon sign. But it so happened to coincide with a pretty toxic ex of mine's birthday. Like,
Oh,
this
no.
person broke into my house and everything. So I was like,
No.
I don't want you to share this birthday with them, right? So I was like, and I was trying to be very like open about, you're gonna come when you come, you're gonna arrive when you arrive. I'm not trying to force anything. I'm not trying to like plan anything. And I really wanted it to be a natural birth, and because just that's like this narrative that I also was like carrying from like my own birth, and thinking like this is how I'm going to heal my own birth and all of that. But basically I made a note of like that new moon cycle, and then like the waxing moon was the next possible date. I was also checking the Fazan calendar here, the Voodoo calendar, because her father's Beninese, and so they have like this rich culture around their spiritual practice around deity worship, and the Voodoo, which are like the Orisha, and so every day is governed by specific deities, and some days are auspicious, some are not. And so the new moon day would have been an inauspicious day. And then a couple days later, it would have been an auspicious day. So I just put a little star on my planner and I whispered to her, listen, you're going to come on this day. And that's all I said. Like, I wasn't like daily like praying and doing like some sort of like ritual around it to try to like ingrain it in the cells or anything. I just said it one time, and it was so fascinating to me because there's synastry that kind of points to like the psychic connection that we have. But when the time came, I actually went into labor on that new moon. So it was like my lunar return. I went into labor, and it was my first time. So I'm like really nervous. And so I ended up laboring for like 36 hours and without medication, and like, feeling those birth pangs, the contractions. It was just like, oh my God. Like, so finally she arrives at this like perfect hour without, you know, there wasn't like any like intervention. My doctor here at the end, I was like begging for meds. I was begging for a cesarean. I was like, let's just do it, get it over with. But he was very supportive and was like, you've come this far. And like, basically, she came through, and I'm like, the clock's like right in front of me, and I'm like making sure the nurses got the right time and all of that. Um,
Great.
and it was just so fascinating. So after we came out of the delivery room and we're in our like private space, I was like looking up her chart immediately. And it was so fascinating to me because um, she was
So
born
pretty.
with, yeah. And like her moon and is conjunct Mars and Venus. It's separating from Mars. So Mars is between Venus and the moon. And, you know, anyone who's maybe beginning to study astrology or like read some of the traditional delineations will be like, oh, Mars and Venus is like represents all this and that, and so that added a bit of stress to me. But one thing that I've come to work with these kind of more like challenging aspects or configurations is that actually it can represent real character building. And so I encourage her to study martial arts, for example. She started learning martial arts. So if that configuration represents any sort of danger in the future, I know that she can protect herself, or at least feel strong enough. Um, so there's things like that. I feel like I work with a lot of remediation in that way. I think when the topic of remediation comes up, people think it's like this big fancy thing or like a set of rituals that you have to do. And it actually can be very simple, donating money to children of specific planetary deities, for example, or getting into certain habits that are governed by the planets, right? And in this case, she's Mars ruled. And so, she's very fiery personality with this like Leo stellium, so it's like, and she loves it. She loves learning karate and she gets into it, and so,
So cool.
yeah, yeah, that's just like one example with like my relationship with her. And what ended up happening is that her ascendant is conjunct my Mercury. And so there was this like intense psychic connection. And throughout my pregnancy, I had these like prophetic dreams. Like I've already seen her like throughout different stages of her life. And I've seen it already kind of unfold a little bit, from those dreams. It was really interesting. But Mercury is also the almutin of pregnancy. So my almutin of pregnancy for me. which is like a whole other topic, but
Yeah.
just kind of tying all
Fascinating.
that in was like really interesting.
Well,
And go ahead.
I love that you are looking for ways to sort of intentionally remediate some things that have raised an eyebrow for you in her chart, where it's like, yeah, that looks like that could be worrisome or challenging over time. So I'm going to get in front of it. And that's what I always encourage parents to do, actually, is that part of the deal of incarnating on earth is, unfortunately, that we're going to go through our share of challenges and difficulties. That's part of life. And so we can't withhold that experience of being human from our kids. We can't just keep them locked in the house the whole time, you know? They have to go out into the world. But looking at their chart gives us an insight of how to give them the tools to do
Mhm.
life.
Yeah.
Definitely. Definitely.
Exactly.
Um, I I feel all of that so strongly. I always talk about with astrology, what one of the things that astrology did for me was I stopped trying to fit the round peg in the square hole in my own personal life and then with my own personal stuff, and meeting my placements or my, aspects or whatever within my interpretation or other people's interpretation. Because again, it's a translation. Astrology is essentially a translation, and we are translators. And things can get lost. And that's why, like what you said, with prediction, we have to be very careful. But I feel like even though no matter what, whether I love that gorgeous story about the birth of your daughter. It's just so fantastic. And if you don't have that story and like you didn't get the good date and like you got the time that's like burnt, do you know what I mean? And you're like, like whoopsie doodle, like couldn't I have held on for like a second longer here, folks? You know what I mean? Um, but
Yeah.
that even then, it's I find that I see like faded like signatures the most within parent-child
Mm.
charts,
Yeah.
and when I've looked at my daughter's chart, I've tried a lot of things, a lot of 12th house placements. Let's put her on a horse, right? Mars and Sagittarius. Let's put her on a horse. She doesn't like it. So it's one of those things too. I've tried all these different things, Venus South Node, very sensitive, and it's one of those things that sometimes too, when you look at the synastry, you can see your side. And you can say, okay, as a parent, not only are we looking at, well, this is my daughter, and this is maybe how I can help her remediate or come to terms with or build resilience. Like, wow, resilience, that's probably the greatest gift that you can give your children and probably one of the hardest things to give them. I am a helicopter parent. I am recovering from it, but I am a helicopter parent, so I totally like feel it, but you will see the fate. My daughters and we have our nodes almost in the same position. Her node is directly on her north node on my IC. Her Venus is right on my IC. Like you can't make that shit up. Her Jupiter is right on my fucking moon. Do you know what I mean? Like burpity burp burp.
That's
So like,
beautiful.
everywhere you go, you're gonna see the unfolding of that. And that's the cool thing, like what you're talking about, Catherine. It's like, as astrologers, we get to choose what we pull out. We get to choose what we translate, and, a heavy consciousness around that, because the unfolding of the potential of your own child, you still are unfolding the potential of your own life. And the child is a part of that faded part of your life. And I'll tell you, I've learned more about my own chart and the way that I tick, from being a mother than,
Mhm.
anything else. So it's one of those things too, sometimes with the chart, is just like, I've got to like, just like I didn't try to fit the square peg in the round hole, I got to get out of my fucking way. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
I got to get out of my way or my daughter's way so that she can take her placements and not have them provide things that fit, and that she
Yeah.
can work with those things, and like you said, you're going to have trouble. You're going to have to build resilience.
Yeah. And it's like, let your child show you who they are. And then
Mhm.
you have their chart as a map of understanding and supporting. And I think this is something that I love what Colin Bedell talks a lot about how we as astrologers need to be careful of how we use astrology in order to like supplement our need for control.
Mm.
And like what you said about your child, like, and needing to like stop trying to put a square peg in a round hole. It's like a lot of us deal with that. So many of us deal with that. And it's like, that's where I try to approach parents. I try to guide parents when looking at their child's chart to say, like, it's not about being able to predict like how that's going to show up. It's about let's let them show us. And I remember, because I know astrologers who are like, no, I don't want to look at my child's chart. I want to wait until they're older. And I was like you, Natalya. I had 2 cesareans with each of my children, and they took them, like they buttoned me up and they're treating me and caring for the babies back there. And you know what I was doing? I was on astro.com.
Yes.
And it's crazy though, because I wouldn't have even needed astro.com to tell me. I would not have even, I knew that when my son, when I started pushing for my daughter, it was also a long labor. It was like a 30+ hour labor, and the sun was rising. It was Taurus season. And they're like, you're going to push and you're going to have a baby soon. And I was thinking, there are no Taurus risings in my family or Gemini risings. There's a lot of Cancer risings. I was like, I think I'm going to be here for a while. And sure enough, 3 hours later, still pushing. And then we're like, all right, she's not coming out. So yeah, my daughter's a Cancer rising, just like me. And then same thing with my son. I did not need my app to tell me where the planets were. I was like, okay, it's 10 p.m. The sun's in Aquarius. It's probably a Virgo or a Libra rising. And then, he was born with 3 degrees Libra rising, and I am a 3-degree Libra sun.
Yeah,
So
that's
he may favor my husband right now. Everyone calls him my husband's twin, but I'm like, you know what? I think he and I are going to be very similar.
I love that.
yeah, I
Yeah.
love that. Yeah, I think the birth chart, even if you don't have children, for like people, I have friends who listen to our recordings that don't necessarily have children, and it's also we're considering our relationship to maybe our parents, like if we're doing like healing work, or if we're fortunate enough to have really positive relationships with our parents as well. Astrology is there to support either or, and yeah, and that's what really fascinates me about those synastries, between like the mother and the child in particular. I think, both parents, and, if you're gender nonconformist, just the parent and the child, I think it's just so fascinating to find those like exact points or near exact points, like with the nodes, the ascendants, the moon. Like my daughter was born with her sun conjunct my lot of spirit, for example. There's like a lot going on in her. Her moon sign is the same as her father's rising sign, right? And then her rising sign is like her father's moon sign, things like that. And we all share this like really fascinating fate. It's so fated. Yeah, and I love that because it reminds me of just how little we know really in the greater scheme of things, and just like to really be contemplating the greater mystery,
Mhm.
Yes.
It's
Yeah.
really
I mean,
cool.
to
Yeah.
be honest, like when we think about our natal charts and how did we get them? Is this random? Because I've had parents who have come to me saying my child they don't like their child's chart. They're nervous
Mm.
by it. They're freaked out by it, and they're like, they were supposed to be born at a different time. This cannot be their chart. And that's always a very difficult conversation to have because, when you also have to consider people are postpartum, people are like going to be disproportionately worried about certain things, but backing it up, um, family astrology was the one thing that really validated for me that our birth charts are not random. They are not random. There is some higher power of intention, and we may not be 100% clear on what that is. Maybe we have some intuitive guidance on what we think. But for whatever reason, our chart is meant for us because it aligns with our family members. And
Mm.
what you both are describing, and what I've shared too about even just these few examples we've shared, there are so many just wild alignments between parent and child.
Mhm.
And it's absolutely not random. Absolutely not random.
Mhm.
Yeah. It makes me
Mhm.
think of also, I have a number of clients who are adopted, right? And so this can also be possibly a sensitive topic around that because not knowing their lineage and everything.
Yeah, my father was adopted, and
Mm.
obviously I was very close with my grandmother who raised him, and they totally had synastry. They totally had synastry. And something I have encountered a lot in my practice is like, a friend, I had a friend who was really close with her aunt, and her aunt decided early on that she would not have kids.
Mm.
And so their theory was that they're soulmates, and in order for them to be together, she had to be born to the aunt's sister, her mom.
Ah,
So she felt like closer with her aunt than with her mom. And this is something I've encountered a lot too as I talk with people who are struggling with fertility and considering adoption. It's like your soulmate is going to find a way to you no matter
mhm.
what. And yes, there may be connections with the biological parents, because also the birth chart is a transit. Okay.
That's right. That's
um
right.
so there's also that layer going on, but you will find that that synastry does not care. I mean, families look a lot of different ways. My sister-in-law just got married to her wife, and her wife is an Aquarius rising. And
Mhm.
do you know who's best friends with her Leo sun? The Aquarius rising wife. Like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
synastry is lovely in that way because it kind of it helps describe the connection.
that's a
Absolutely.
fantastic point. Yeah. I love that you said that because yeah, the synastry between people that are, brought up by certain parents and it's like they go well, they go hand in hand. Like I'm a stepmother also to my daughter's older brother and older sister, and we also share synastry in that way. With the older brother, we have the same rising sign. And yeah, there's, and her older sister has like water moon as well, so like we have like real strong synastry between us and beyond those 2 points, but those were really like the stand apart points. And you know we're looking at synastry as like who we choose to make family with, whether it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be biological. It's we're who we're
Mhm.
choosing to be with.
Absolutely. I love how you talked about the birth chart also being a transit.
Yeah.
That is one thing. I don't know if you get into that ever with if you two get into that with your clients. I do when I'm looking at the natal charts with synastry with family. I do sometimes pull the composite. I don't know if you guys have ever worked with much composite charts, and I have found, especially regarding transits. When transits hit points on the composite chart, they often show up inside of the relationship with my daughter or with my husband or with whoever. I've been tracking it for a bit of time. It's fascinating. I also find because the natal chart gives us the solar return and it gives us the lunar return. And I think lunar returns are underutilized for children personally. I often offer a back to school 3-month lunar return reading for people with their kids to help them get their kid ready for school and what they might encounter or not encounter, or what it might be like, or what might be some of the different things. And so, I mean, when they're newborns, and they're really, really little, like you were talking about, Catherine, you really have to run the little bit of interference of like, dude, you're just surviving. Like you're surviving right now. You know what I mean? Like you are sleep deprived, you don't know what's going on. You have some kind of postpartum something. I don't care what anyone says. Everybody has some kind of postpartum, and it's, your mind is going a mile a minute. So half of the job is just to allow them to help them settle into that role as a mother, which they're transitioning into in a lot of ways. But as they get a little bit older, I do start looking at lunar returns, transits, these types of things to kind of help to see. I don't know, have you used that at all, Catherine or Natalya?
Yeah, I was gonna interject about the lunar returns, even in postpartum, because, when the child is a newborn and, we're trying to measure their growth, whether that's like imposed by the medical industry or not, but we want to see them developing, and the whole um the whole time measurement is based off of the moon, right? They're like 1 month old, 2 months old. So when I had my daughter, I was noticing her lunar returns and then seeing her, reaching or getting close to reaching a certain milestone. Also the Mercury returns. Because she started walking when she got her first Mercury return, and I thought that was really
Aw.
interesting. Yeah, so yeah, I would say definitely you can pay attention to transits like that in the beginning, and I think it's a really useful way to become familiar with how the transits might even play out for the baby.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm.
I haven't looked at lunar returns in a while. I used to. In fact, I was looking at them when I was like, when is this baby coming out? I was obsessively looking at my lunar returns. Um, but something I do look at a lot is Mars for young children because yeah, babies are very lunar, but tell you what, toddlers are very martial. And I would notice that my son in particular, because he started walking at 9 months old. He started pulling himself up to stand at like 6 months old. And yeah, I was paying attention to Mars because Mars was both animating him, but
Mm.
also encouraging injuries. So like the more he would try to get from point A to point B, he would also be getting hurt. And I'll never forget the time he pulled himself up on his toy kitchen and it fell on him. So it's like I am always paying attention to these Mars transits because that's when they're going to start taking more risks. They're going to be talking more. They're going to be screaming more. And also, yes, very accident prone.
Oh my God, the screaming.
Temper tantrum time.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah.
nobody gets away from it.
Especially
No.
the Mars transiting the ascendant. I noticed that. Yeah, my daughter ended up getting a fever this past transit of hers. So I was like, yeah. But she has a pretty strong immune system. I don't know, able to manage it, but that's a really good point to like put it into perspective, the toddler years around Mars. There's
Oh, yeah.
Caleb with Heavy Metal Astrology does a lot of work with Mars and hoping to get him on an episode to talk about Mars and in Astrology for Parenting. So
Do it.
yeah, I think it'll be great.
Yeah. I mean, I really do hone in with kids on Mercury and the moon. I don't know if that's because I watched an amazing lecture from Lee Lehman and from a long time ago, and she spoke about
Love
that
her.
with, she's so good. Um,
Yeah.
We love you, Lee Lehman. Okay, but anyway, relax, Catherine. Um, uh, and she spoke about the Mercury and the moon being like the most important outside of those the luminary, like the sun, in terms of with children helping to kind of look at and define with kids. So that usually is like when I am doing consultations with parents, I will lead there. Do you know what I mean? Because that was something that was strong for me. I was like, my daughter's gonna go to Waldorf. She's gonna be like naked, running around, in New York City. She's gonna be like throwing pottery and doing all this cool shit, right? And then Saturnian Mercury, right? And, she didn't like that. She likes normal, regular, routine school, sharpen my pencil. I know exactly what's coming next. I mean, I'm like, who are you, kid? But allowing myself, to see that, I was like, oh, okay. And then I could also settle in myself, because it was a sticking point between me and my husband, because my poor husband puts up with so much, my husband has stopped asking, what is that? It's like, it's all good. Just ignore it. Everything's fine.
Yep, mine too. Mine too.
Don't
Just
worry about
observe.
that. Don't worry about that random picture up on the wall with like a bunch of offerings underneath it. Everything's cool. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, we're chill over here. What, you didn't hear that ringing? Don't worry about it. Anyway, so like that Mercury was really helpful. And then what's really interesting is that we both have water moons. I have a Scorpio moon and she has a Cancer moon. So that is there, but those are whether they have an affinity for each other. Yeah, they're both sensitive and like they take things in and other things. Those are very different moons,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, um, the need to be cocooned within and around me, is something that, and fed well, like I don't need to eat, I'm a,
Yeah.
you know,
Mm.
I'm a freak.
Me,
I'm the cockroach of the
honestly.
pack. I don't got to eat,
Same.
like I'll just grab whatever, but like she needs to be nurtured, fed, almost like, babied in ways that sometimes my Scorpio moon is like, you know what I mean? And I have to go, okay, like we need to enter into this. We got to put this stuff aside. Again, that's all that synastry looking at things. It's just interesting.
But isn't that beautiful though? That you have the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And here you are with a Scorpio moon, a moon that is struggles. I mean, I have a moon in Scorpio too. It is not an easy placement. Would I trade it? Maybe on a bad day I would. But I do like the moon in Scorpio a lot. I'm really grateful for it. But when my daughter was going to be born, it was looking like she might be a Libra moon or a Scorpio moon. And I was praying that it wasn't going to be a Scorpio moon. And thankfully she did get a Libra moon. And the reason I was so worried was because my father has a moon in Scorpio to the like within 2 degrees of mine. So I was really conscientious of trying to move that pattern and what that represents in my family.
Wow.
My daughter ended up being born with a Libra moon square Pluto. So she did inherit some degree of
Depth.
perceptivity and intensity and resilience with that moon, but it was different. And I was very happy about that. And so what I wanted to say to you, Catherine, is how beautiful that you with a fallen moon had a baby with a cozy domicile moon.
Oh, that means so much. And when we talk about family synastry too, my relationship with my mother is difficult and interesting, in many ways, she is, indicative of that Scorpio moon conjoined to Uranus too. You got to remember that. And that Scorpio, there wasn't a lot of affection in my family, it was very, very buttoned up. And, I don't remember my mother ever kissing me. I remember sometimes being held a little bit. So, I love that you brought that up. That's something that, even this episode revealed to me when we're talking about family synastry. I hadn't caught that, that like there was this beautiful within my intentionality of having the child, this beautiful way of like what you talk about, Natalia, like maybe healing a little bit of those wounds. And that even though I have the Scorpio moon, I'm armed with, astrology to be able to have me transcend that within the way that I love my daughter. That's really profound.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really profound. My mother has the moon in Capricorn, and she actually has major placements in all the cardinal signs except Cancer. And then I was her Cancer moon baby, which, I mean, she had a really challenging relationship with her mother, my grandmother. Um, and yeah, I thought about that with my daughter because so I have Jupiter in detriment, right? Or exile Jupiter, and she was born with like Jupiter in Pisces. So I was like, okay, well, at least you'll have this, so it's really wonderful to think about our children's charts as like where there's been cycles broken or where there's potential for
Totally.
intergenerational healing. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. And I've seen that a lot in my client work too, where it's like you might have a really difficult moon, but then your child has this beautiful, happy moon. And it just shows that, like, maybe astrology, maybe other modalities that you're using are helping you evolve and change. And the other thing about the moon in Scorpio, something I've noticed just through my own parenting, because I was nervous. Like, I have a moon in Scorpio. The moon, it tells us how we connect and how we nurture. And does that mean I'm going to be really harsh? And yeah, I mean, maybe sometimes I come off that way, but I also think that the moon in Scorpio is really loving. Like, I, I, s- my daughter sometimes tells me I squeeze her too hard. Like, my husband's like, stop kissing him. My
We
husband's an
all want to
Aquarius.
devour, we all want to devour our children. Come on.
It
Yeah.
makes me think of that image of like when scorpions have their offspring, they're like all piled up on the back of the scorpion mother.
Yes. Yeah,
I,
it's
I,
just
th- I,
funny.
I mean, I think it's so interesting too because within everything in astrology, it's a long spectrum. It is not, like just this, just that, or just, and astrology is not all just good or bad. I mean, not to like, the Jupiter and Pisces, gorgeous, but I have seen a lot of people that have Jupiter and Pisces in the first house and they struggle. Do you know what I mean? Because it's almost
Yeah,
too much, do you know? And so
yeah,
there's
yeah,
always like those both sides. Like, things don't
yeah,
necessarily have to always be that good or bad. But I agree
yeah,
with you. If it's watery, it's gonna be loving, because it's so damn sensitive. It's also like, and that's the problem. Scorpios can be emotionally reactive. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, temper time, as far as I'm concerned. But I have the
Yeah,
Uranus there. I have the Uranus there. So it's like explosion.
right. And
Anyway.
and it's like, what? Okay, so we're talking about some lovely things that have shifted intergenerationally. But let's say you meet someone whose child does have a really difficult moon, or their child does have a really difficult placement. A lot of times that intensity can be explained by what's happening in the parents' chart. And then you're able to say, oh, well, they're like you. They're like you. But other times it's like, you know, um, how do we encourage the parents to support this child? And without naming whether this is good, bad, easy, difficult, without naming that, can we
mhm,
just say, there's a moon in Capricorn, your child is not going to want to be made fun of.
mhm,
You know what I mean? Like,
Boom.
my nephew has moon in Capricorn and he gets real embarrassed. So it's like, you need to come to him differently. You need to
mhm,
treat him with some respect, as something a lot of kids don't get. So it's just being able to take astrology as an art form. Like William Lilly often called it like the art of astrology. You'll hear that a lot. Like, it referred to the art. And it's because we are artists. We get to interpret it in our own creative way. And I think you have to do that when looking at a child's chart. Like, let's be creative here. How can we resource the parent in order to feel empowered in how to support their child? Like, oh, that Capricorn moon, you're going to need some projects. You're going to be a little bit more goal oriented than your peers. Or like your child, Catherine, like your child may not be as into like risk taking like the other kids, but but maybe they like routines and practice, and maybe they can get really good at something through repetition. So it's like, what does that moon need? How is that moon fed is maybe the better question, rather than naming names.
Oof, I love that so freaking much. I love that so freaking much. And I think that's that thing with parenting in general and with kids. It always ends up being a reflection back on yourself, you know? And no parent wants to go to a consultation and be like, "Tell me about my kid." And you're like, "Well, let me tell you about you." You know what I mean? But that's really, you know, in as nice a way as you can put it, that's really what's going on, because you also want to arm the parents to be the best parents that they can be to this particular child, you know?
Yeah.
That's what they really probably want, you know? Here are some answers, some tools. Let me calm you down. Everything's chill, but some answers and tools. And, you know, not for nothing, I do find sometimes, now I had a very interesting, you know, coming up in astrology, attending the Oracular School of Astrology for 3 years. And the first thing that we learn is horary astrology. We don't learn horoscopic. It's horary, and it's all about learning the dignities, you know, every single little dignity, all the little thing. And so, you know, I found that when we transitioned into learning about natal, the dignities didn't bear as much weight as sometimes I think the traditional astrologers place onto the dignity scheme. You know, it's like all the planets have to go through all the signs. The planets are the players and the actors, and the signs are that, you know, the costume or whatever they put on. It's the lens through which they express themselves, and it's the expression of the unfolding of the seasons, right? And of life itself. So I mean, all the planets have to go through everything, and they all have their, like what you said, not good or bad, but different ways of working. My Scorpio moon loves criticism. Criticize the heck out of me. It's going to make me better. Do you know what I mean? I can take it. But my daughter's Cancer moon, she's not going to take the criticism, you know? So then what does it come down to? It comes down to me as a mom. Am I going to be able to keep my moon in check, you know, and not be critical? Can I put that pause in there for her, you know? So that's that, you know, some of those types of things. And not to downplay dignity. It's just that sometimes I'm a little like, yo, it isn't the end all be all, you know?
No, you're right. It's not. And that's such an excellent point. And that brings up a lot of questions about where we derive that sort of level of judgment and where we apply it, right?
Mhm.
Because absolutely, if you're asking a relationship horary and that moon is difficult, you already have your answer. That moon is happy, you have your answer. But in a nativity, in a natal chart, it's like, it's not like you're looking at a scenario and deciding what's happening with the scenario. It's like, this person has an entire life to live this out. And it's like, yeah, I mean, we have moons in Scorpio. That's not the easiest, but you learn to love it. You learn to work with it. And what I said earlier, I'm not sure I would trade it. So, I mean, you learn to work with the quote unquote challenging placements. And sometimes it helps define who you are. It pushes you toward things that you might not have otherwise found if you were too comfortable.
True. And it pushes you towards that fate or towards that potential, you know, that isn't up to the parents to decide. That's up to the child and the unfolding of their own lives to decide. Yeah, definitely, definitely. And like you said, you know, astrology I think of as the divinity of time, you know, and so we're freezing this time. And so, you know, horary, it's a short time. It's boom, right then. You know,
Yeah.
that's why you get the answer right away. And that's where
Yeah.
dignity came from, you know. And then we move to like the natal. And like you said, you got your whole freaking life to learn to live with that. And you know what? It's actually a gift. It's actually, if it's used well, a beautiful, wonderful gift, because you will be the most you that you can be, you know? And I just really, the power of astrology, the power of it. I say to people all the time, I'm like, it is just one lens. We have to ground our astrology in the reality of our world and our conditioning inside of everything, right? Our family synastry, the whole kit and caboodle. But it is such an underutilized and powerful lens, And I really hope that, some of these conversations and these talks about parenting and astrology, that this can become a bit more of a conversation point, that astrologers can expand out a little bit to really begin a discussion about parent-child synastry. How can we use astrology to help parents, to help children, to use this beautiful, as you called it, Catherine, art?
Yeah. And what you were saying earlier about how like there really isn't a lot of perspective on parent-child synastry in the ancient world or in antiquity. But you know what there's a lot of now? A lot of astrologers who are parents. And I think one of the things that goes back to also is that like back in the day, not everyone had the privilege of casting their own nativity. And for that matter, having familial connections, like being able to look at your own nativity, but also those of family members. Because not everyone had the privilege of having their birth time recorded. And so it was probably a very small population to observe. Like, unless you were a court astrologer for a family, a royal family, you might not get to see that as much. But I know it was one of the first light bulbs to go off for me when I started looking at natal charts. I cast my own chart, I cast some for my friends, then naturally went to my family members and was kind of startled by the overlap and the similarity. And I sincerely, it was like a consciousness explosion because I was wondering, is this a thing? Like, do other people share this sort of overlap and synastry with their family members? And turns out we do. and and I think there's a lot of us practicing astrology today with families, and this is cool. I'm really excited about your series, Natalya and Catherine. This is so cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so excited that we got to talk with you, and that's a really good point about there's not a lot in the text around family dynamics, but the political sphere and the whole worldview was a bit more different. And I think children too, um, they're kind of like the lesser citizens, for a long part of our human history. Like children haven't had rights and they haven't had, the just the attention that they've deserved. And I think we've done a lot to change that in the last like 100 years. And then in our generation, I think there's been a lot, a lot of regard for the child, because I think possibly like our generation with like the two previous ones, I think the boomers and the Gen Xers, like, really started to pave that path forward where becoming sensitive to like, you know, just being a conscious being as a child, and then recognizing the world that we're being brought up in and recognizing its flaws. It carries into like our practice and who we are now. And um I think a lot of people that are astrologers are wanting to heal these patterns, and so they use astrology for that. And yeah, so I'm excited to explore this with other astrologer parents as well. Yeah, we could really unpack a lot.
That's such an
definitely.
excellent point about earlier generations perhaps not even being as concerned. like like
Yeah.
I think that's something very common now, where maybe it's because of the certain luxuries were afforded just socially about getting to have a little bit more agency over the lives that we live, that we can say, you know, I want to be a good parent and I want to do this for my kids. Whereas before it was kind of like, you did this and you did this, you kept them alive. You kept them alive. And so to be living at a time where there's a lot more curiosity and research about the psychology of a child and approaches to parenting, and a lot of what I do, a lot of what informs my astrology practice is because I'm also listening to parenting podcasts. I'm also reading parenting books. Whole Brain Child. You know what I mean? Like
Great.
there's a
It's a great book.
lot.
It's a great book. It's great. I mean, look, conscious parenting is a new thing. Conscious parenting, that
Wow.
phrase in and of itself is an entirely new conception. And, I often talk about how we talk about the Pluto and Aquarius and everything else, Uranus, all of them bringing in all that technology. But, the first technology is our brain. Our own brain is technology. And we often underestimate just how far brain science has come, particularly brain science around children and teenagers. They've shown the neuroelasticity of the teenage brain. It allows it so that, they'll take risks, they'll create inventions, they'll go the extra 5 yards. Normally, teenagers were just, oh, you're hormonal. It's not that they're hormonal, it's that their freaking brain is neuroplastic right this moment. And they're doing like 25,000 synapses and like forming their like long-term conceptions. It's like, oh my God, you know what I mean? So some of that technology is so fascinating. And I do think it's carrying over into the science of psychology, and thankfully, the science of parenting, because, it's very important now for us to raise our children conscious, right? And to, have them learn, to be able to be compassionate and to be of service to the greater world around them, more so than ever, I think, at the moment now. But I guess everyone says that, right? But yes, it's been so wonderful. If you don't mind, I'd love to read this beautiful quote from Catherine, maybe to sort of tie it all up together. I have a beautiful quote from your Family Astrologer series. Here I go, embarrassing you. And I quote, an astrological consultation can help affirm your best options and help you stride with greater confidence in who you are and what you're here to do in this lifetime. Astrology is affirming. It is a non-judgmental process, and it can help us all live out the embodiment of our charts without shame or fear. Amen, Catherine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Oh my goodness. I'm so honored. And thank you both so much, Catherine and Natalya. This has been so enriching to chat with you both. And I would love to reconnect sometime.
Oh,
Yeah,
it's
it's
going
been so
down.
good having you. Yeah.
No doubt.
But yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It's been really wonderful. And do you have any upcoming events or anything you'd like to plug at the end of this?
Yeah. So right now, because I still have two really young kids, a 5 and a 2-year-old, I'm not super busy in terms of extra offerings. My books are always open, and I did just create a new offering for new parents. So it's called Baby's First Astrology Reading. And this was created by demand. Like, I let my clients tell me what they want. And so you can now book Baby's First Astrology Reading. It's a 45-minute reading. And intentionally, this is not a session that focuses on hard predictions. It's about embracing with wonder, love, and curiosity our child's chart, so that you're the first to hear about this on the
Nice.
Orphic Astrology podcast.
Awesome.
Yeah, this is the first. Yeah, so that's what I've got going on right now. And then I'm going to be at NORWAC this year and UAC. So hope to connect with you both. Maybe
Yeah.
there, maybe just
Now, wait a
online.
minute. Aren't you the keynote speaker this year? at
Oh,
NORWAC.
stop. I am doing one. I'm doing a keynote. Yes.
La 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 la. That's so
Nice.
cool.
That's
Really,
so
really
fabulous.
excited for you.
Yeah, and then you're speaking at UAC for the first time, right? Are you
Yes, it will be my
big deal?
first UAC. And
Yeah.
yeah, there's a reason for that. As a Cancer rising, I do love small conferences. I love the intimacy of them. So I'm very excited about UAC, but also like, oh my God, there's
Yeah.
so many good lectures to choose from. I don't know how I'm possibly going to choose.
You won't. We're gonna have a
Yeah.
roulette wheel. We're gonna go like that, and we're gonna be like, boom, okay, and then we'll all three go to different ones and report back,
There you
after.
go.
It will be impossible to bifurcate ourselves to all of them, but it is really exciting. I will be at UAC as well. I'm very excited to get to meet you in person, so that'll be awesome.
Yeah.
Yay. Natalia, are you going to be there?
I'm gonna try to go. I have to work out some logistics for traveling,
I
but
know.
yeah, if I can go to one, it will be that one. Yes, we shall see.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers
I know.
crossed.
I know. I want to give you a big huggy.
Yeah, it's really great to connect in person.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And Catherine, do you have anything you want to plug as well?
I don't at this moment have anything major that I want to plug. Like Catherine, I also am just at the point raising my daughter, and I will be at UAC. I am going to do a lunch lecture there, so that's kind of cool. And
Oh,
then I do have some live events coming up in my Rockaway Beach neighborhood. I have WTF is going on up there. That's coming up on November 19th. That's just dealing with the outer planets. And then I also have a couple of webinars that I'm working on, mainly around Uranian astrology. Jolly and I made a Saturn and Aries where we are exploring the energetic markers and connections within different sign placements. So I do have that webinar out now as well.
I love
oh,
that
that's
webinar.
yeah, that's so
Yay!
interesting. Yeah, and my books are open as well. I have some limited slots for November and December, but I am running a promo where people can get 30% discount using a special code, which I'll put in the description box. And yeah, and then I will link everybody's website and other information to this video. Thank you
Perfect.
so much. It's been really great talking with you. And I know we could go on and talk for hours, but we'll have to set another episode and explore other
Yeah,
things.
unfortunately, Catherine's coming back, but it's good.
Oh no. Yes, I'm so excited. I'm so excited.
Yeah, we could talk for hours, but we have to parent.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to go make dinner right now. And Natalia, you probably have to go to bed.
I
Yeah,
know.
the kids are like they've been trying to sneak in and I'm like
Yeah,
I need
my
a
family
lock on my
came in
door.
and they're tiptoeing in the front of the house. I was like, "Don't come back here." You know what I mean? Families. They're waiting up there.
Well,
Awesome. Thank you so much, ladies.
thank
All right,
you.
bye.
Bye.